Hello Internet, it is me, the man. And have you ever looked at your controller and thought to yourself, why am I playing with this comfortable, well-made quality product when I could be playing with this oddly shaped lightweight piece of crap? I mean, it has a turbo button! The third-party controller, an affordable alternative to the genuine item, which was, for some reason, always sticky. Oh my god, whose hair is this? Now, way back when, third-party controllers were actually an advantage over what came with the system, giving you extra buttons and more ways to play. And even up to the time of the PS2 and the Wii, third-party options were still a good way of getting things like larger-sized memory cards and more uncommon types of wires. In recent years, as controllers have become more and more complicated, third-party options have started to die off, and oftentimes, third-party options are more expensive than the original controller, giving you extra buttons and more options. But when I was a kid, third-party controllers were the best way of getting a complete set for your system, at a fraction of the price. And they were a necessity if you commonly had friends over to play, because you didn't want them getting their Cheeto-encrusted fingers on your favorite controller. They could also help to ensure that home turf advantage. Now, as an only child, I never had to worry about fighting a sibling for the better controller, but I've also been told that that happens. Just as I have a large collection of games, I also have quite a lot of peripherals, especially the third-party ones. So in today's video, I'd like to go over some of the weirder ones in my collection. Let's take a look. Let's start off with this absolute unit for the Sega Genesis. Now, besides the fact the controller looks like a Batman gadget, what's really cool about it is this doodad attached to the wire. Now, this is an adapter that allows you to plug Atari and Genesis controllers into a Super Nintendo. My first thought was that this would allow you to plug anything you want into a Super Nintendo, but unfortunately it's sized to only allow this controller to plug in. Anything else is just too tight a squeeze. Which is too bad, because this controller honestly kind of sucks. The fact that the buttons are labeled for both SNES and Genesis is just confusing. I mean, do I hit the XY button or the YX button? I just don't know, man. Then there's this controller, and even though everything about it from its form factor to the shape and placement of its start and select buttons resembles a PS1 controller, it's actually for the Sega Genesis. Now, I can't really imagine why anyone would make this, considering the PS1 came out several years after the Genesis, but other than that, it's actually not a terrible controller. It's just weird seeing those buttons on a PS1-shaped device. Now, I've got some weird actual PS1 controllers as well, like this QuickShot one, where the L1 and R1 buttons are inside the L2 and R2 buttons for some reason. This is weird, but also awful, because it is so easy to click the wrong button by mistake. I've also got the Commander Super Pad, which I assume from the font was meant to be played with Command and Conquer, but the gimmick of the controller is that you have a turbo and auto switch for every single button, and I can't imagine that being super helpful with an RTS. Besides that, the handles are incredibly uncomfortable, and for some reason only L2 and R2 are on the back, and L1 and R1 are buttons on the front with the face buttons. This controller is just a total mess. Then I have the Mega Racer, which was supposed to better simulate driving by allowing you to spin this rubber disc with your thumb, but only a little bit. There's not a lot of give in either direction. Now, I suppose this would be slightly better than playing with a D-pad, but considering how awful the L and R buttons are and how uncomfortable the grips on the controller itself is, I think I would rather just pass entirely. For the original Xbox, I have this controller by Score Game, which they actually made look like the aesthetic of the original Xbox itself. Unfortunately, they also made it about as comfortable to hold as an original Xbox. It's an incredibly awkwardly shaped controller with really small analog sticks. It looks really cool to display next to an original Xbox, but man, I would almost rather play with anything else. Well, maybe anything except that controller, which I keep in a plastic bag because it is sticky and gross and I hate it. For the PS2, I have this pink GameStop controller that I actually really like, and not just for its manly color. It has these long textured handles that make for a very comfortable grip, and tiered L and R buttons that allow you to hold L and R1 and L and R2 simultaneously comfortably. Overall, this is probably my favorite PS2 controller. And then I've got this one, the Patrick from Spongebob controller, which is not terrible. It actually feels a lot like an official PS2 controller. I will say the Nickelodeon D-pad is uncomfortable to use as the raised up letters dig into your thumb, and you do have to touch Patrick's man boobs to move the analog sticks, which is kind of weird. But most importantly, you do have to gouge out his eyes like you're in an episode of Game of Thrones in order to press the start and select buttons, which is even more uncomfortable. They did change the X button to be a jellyfish, so that's kind of cute, I guess. Now personally, what I think is the coolest third-party accessory in my entire collection is this. This is a Blu-ray remote for the PS3. It's fairly unassuming at first glance, however, it pops open like an old flip phone, revealing an entire controller's worth of buttons underneath, including analog sticks. Now you can use the controller as just a DVD remote, or you can flip it open to reveal a full QWERTY keyboard, an entire controller's worth of buttons, both analog sticks, and the L and R buttons on the back, which means that you can actually use this as an oddly shaped DualShock 3 controller. Now that was everything I had for the PS3, but I do have a bunch of stuff for the Wii. Unfortunately, most of it is boring. I have this kind of adapter that allows you to hold a Wii remote like an actual controller. Not super interesting, but very handy for playing Super Mario Brothers. I have a ton of Wii wheels, but the Nerf one was always really nice. It's much larger than the official Nintendo one, and it's squishy, so you can get a really nice grip on it while playing. Now this is probably my weirdest Wii wheel. I think it's by Nyko, but I could be wrong about that. Unfortunately, it's broken. The B button on the back is just completely caved in. But what makes this one really unique is the fact that you actually plug the Wiimote into the wheel itself, and then on the back it has a pass-through for the Nunchuck port. So you could technically plug a Nunchuck or a classic controller into your Wiimote while it's in the wheel. I have no idea why you would ever need to do this, but it's really cool that this one gives you the option to. Now, since the Wii Remote was such a cutting-edge controller for its time, you don't see a lot of third-party alternatives, but I did find this Skylanders-themed one. It's very small in my hands, both the Nunchuck and the remote itself, but it's got a nice rubbery coating, so at least it feels good to use. Other than that, not a lot to say about it. It's just kind of weird. Oh, I also have this fake Nunchuck. It looks pretty real from a distance, but the second you give a closer look to its wobbly analog stick, you can tell that it's a cheap bootleg. Also, it feels like it has the durability of paper mache with a hole in it. Now, one of my favorite official Wii peripherals was the Wii Zapper. There were several games that used it, but a lot fewer that utilized it well. As a kid, I still thought it was super cool though, because it was like you were using a real gun, even though the trigger had to be in your left hand so you could navigate with your right thumb. Anyway, one of the games to use it the best was Link's Crossbow Training, the game it came with. I played a lot of this as a kid, and fun fact, it's one of the first games I ever 100%ed. I was super motivated to do so because my mom did it a week before I did, so pro gamer points to my mom. Anyway, I always thought the design of the crossbow itself was so cool, because it really did look like a Wii Zapper with a Wiimote and a Nunchuck just with crossbow limbs on it. And younger me always thought that it would be really cool to own that. Well, it turns out, 10 years later, I found one at a pawn shop for $15. This is literally just Link's crossbow. I could not find anything about this on the internet. I think it's from China, and I think originally it was about $30. It's just a plastic Wii Zapper with completely useless bowstrings, and it just looks like Link's crossbow, except without the Triforce on it, because that's copyrighted. But it does have one very, very cool feature. If you press this little button right here underneath the trigger, it has a laser pointer. I'm not kidding, it has a laser pointer. I don't know why you would need a laser pointer if you literally have a target on screen of where you're pointing, but I mean, I guess it's cool to play with your cat? I don't know. Honestly, it kind of feels like every company made their own Wii Zapper. Here's the Activision one for the Cabela games. It only has a Nunchuck trigger, so you can't really easily press the B button on the Wii remote, but it does have this cool feature of simulating loading a shotgun, so you feel like an absolute badass every time you hold it. It does limit what games you can play with it though, but it is pretty cool. There's also this one, which is more in the style of the original Zapper, except you can take the Nunchuck part off, and then you just have a pistol. And it actually has a pretty realistic, like, Colt 1911 grip on it. So this was always pretty cool. I also have this one that I've never opened, and I probably never will. This one is more in the style of the Cabela one, where you don't have a trigger for the Wii remote, but it's a lot shorter, so it's kind of like a hunting rifle pistol combo, if that's what you're into. Okay, so this next one I just find genuinely bizarre. So when I saw it for $6 at a thrift store, I had to grab it. This is a third-party Wii Fitness balance board by Intec. Why? Why would anyone ever buy this? It wasn't even substantially lower priced than the original at launch, and it feels so much cheaper in my hands. And most annoyingly, it requires a USB dongle to even connect to your Wii, unlike the original. And of course, when I bought it at the thrift store, it did not come with that dongle, so I have no way of testing it. Now, the little rubber dots do feel kinda nice on your feet, and it does look pretty cool with the blue highlights, but otherwise, this is just such a weird thing to make a third-party copy of. Now, while the Wii Remote had almost every peripheral imaginable under the sun made for it, like this Last of Us 2 inspired controller, you don't really think about a lot being made for the PlayStation Move wand. Now, besides this lovely blue rubber sleeve I have for mine, what else did you get? You got the overpriced steering wheel that worked for like 2 games, and the gun for SOCOM and Killzone and Time Crisis and a couple other things. But besides that, there wasn't really anything else. Although I did find this sealed at a thrift store, and again, I will never open this. This is a tennis racket peripheral for the wand, and it is very much in the style of the stuff for the Wiimote, and you can take, I don't know how well this comes off on camera, you can take the tennis racket part off and just have the base. So that must mean that they made others, but this is all you get. So, and like, what else was there? This must have been for sports champions, right? So tennis, and there was archery, frisbee, volleyball, swords. I could see having a sword. That'd be cool. But like, this was so weird. It was like $2. I had to get it. But I can't imagine why you would need this. And the fact that the clip has to go around the squishy ball. Who made this and why? This next one is also really cool. This is a Japanese copy of Arkanoid Ds. Now, even though this game was released in North America, our copies had one important difference. They did not include the paddle controller for the DS Lite. So here it is, the paddle controller for the DS Lite. This was only released in Japan. So this was made by Taito for Taito, so it fits right into the Game Boy slot on the DS Lite. Now there is that gap there because I do believe this also worked with the original DS as well. Now I can't read Japanese, but it does give you the options like in the North American one of playing with the D-pad or the stylus, but now we also have the option of playing with the paddle. Okay, so it doesn't look that exciting to use, but this actually feels really nice. Yeah, okay, I don't really have anything else to say about it. This is really fun. I actually like this. I should take this out of the box more. And you can totally spin the paddle really far, too. I've also got this Nintendo DS docking charging stand that doesn't let you play the DS while it's charging, so that's great. But hey, it lights up, and when it's done charging, you get to pop your DS out like a piece of toast. Well, I think that's about it. We've looked at all the weirdest and coolest third-party controllers in my collection, huh?
Hey Joshua, you want to play Japanese Mario Tennis?
Heck yeah, that sounds awesome! You can even play with my special guest controller! Huh. You know, maybe this is why I don't have a lot of friends. Hey, thank you so much for watching this video. I really hope you enjoyed it. If you want a place to chill, you can always join my Discord server. The link's down below. That's where all the cool people that made this fan art on screen like to hang out. Other than that, if you've subscribed, thanks. I really appreciate it, and I hope you'll continue to enjoy all the content I'll produce in the future. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you again on whatever I decide to make next real soon. Goodbye! So you feel like an absolute badass every time you... Oh my... Jesus Christ. Okay, that was not supposed to happen.